Welcome to the latest episode of The Independent, a live, somewhat unscheduled episode here. I'm Pete Sampson, joined as always by my host, Matt Fortuna. And as I described to somebody that's in a text message a couple minutes ago, a bit of a strange journey from point A to point B and then all the way back to point A. I think this CJ Carr as quarterback one would have surprised absolutely nobody on July 30th, and yet somehow feels a bit shocking here on August 19th.
Steve Angeli got named starter. We're going to talk about that, right?
Yeah.
Or is that
and Daniel Jones with the Colts. So it's like the state of Indiana. It's starting quarterback day.
Riley Leonard did not make okay. Yeah, I think you just summed it up perfectly. I think we were probably always going to do an emergency pod whenever a starter was named because we haven't had a competition like this in quite some time. I think at the outset of camp and probably even through the first week or so of camp, we still both were very much in the camp of like, okay, when's Carr going to pull away so we can talk about him being the starter and we can move on with preparing for the season. And then the rest of this month happened and I was there Sunday. You were there Sunday. Everything we've all heard was Minchey. We are not at practice. I want to make that abundantly clear. Like you got a few viewings of warm-ups. You got the first practice. But we are not at practice every day. That said, me, you, and everyone else in the media talks to a lot of people who are, and I have not heard a single soul, adjacent or otherwise, say CJ Carr has been the better quarterback in camp than Kenny Minchey. Therefore, we all expected the announcement this week to be that it was Minchey, to the point where I texted you and a few others the other night saying, what are they waiting for? It is obvious to everyone who is there. And again, we do not see this with our own two eyes, but I trust the people that do. And then we get the announcement today that it's Carr, and I was getting in the car no pun intended. Sorry, I was getting the Honda to drive home from an appointment, and I was like, "Wait, what? Did I read that right?" And yeah, that was that. I was floored, as was every single person I spoke to so far.
It will be fascinating if we ever, and we probably won't, but if we ever get like an accounting of the competition from Marcus Freeman or Mike Denbrock, and we don't talk to either of them, I think, until next week, next Tuesday. I think that's the media schedule for next week. But you know what got Carr over the top? What did Carr do better than Minchey? Because I think that both of us had heard that Minchey protected the ball a little bit better. I think the run threat is kind of overstated with Minchey relative to Carr. I think they both can move. That's how the staff feels about it. And I talked to somebody super tied into this yesterday evening or yesterday afternoon, and Marcus's sort of take in private was the same thing as in public. Like, we can win with both of these guys. It's just interesting when you hear like stuff trickle out and there's a lot of pro Minchey stuff, but I didn't really hear a whole lot of pro Carr stuff other than stuff that had happened in spring practice, this year, spring practice the year before, where he was phenomenal. And I think that's part of the reason why I felt like he was inevitable right up until about this time last week. So yeah, it was just, you wonder like what Carr did to separate, even if the separation is oh so slight, which I'm assuming that it is based on the way Marcus Freeman talked privately and publicly over the weekend. So I don't know. You've talked to a bunch of people. Do you have a sense of like what got Carr over the line with this?
I don't, and I think I don't want to call it a spin job, but like the line I'm sure we will get when we do hear from the involved parties is this was not a decision to beat Miami. This was a decision to win a national championship, because I do think the upside is higher with Carr.
I agree.
And I do think you beat Miami by limiting turnovers, which Carr by every single account has not done in practice to this point. The term gunslinger has gotten thrown around a lot when describing him, and that can mean a good thing and it can mean a bad thing. In this case, it has not been the most positive. When you look at that Notre Dame defense, and I don't say this to downplay the decision to downplay either quarterback, I almost think it shouldn't matter as much as long as they protect the football and make the right reads. Again, whoever it was that's going to be starting is going to be making their first start. It's going to be an intense environment. I'm just based on every single thing I've heard. I'm very, very surprised. I think it would have, you know, the running joke was like Carr might have to have the best practice ever to unseat Minchey at this point. Well, they had one Sunday. You were told he threw 2 red zone picks. Yesterday, they did basically a game day walkthrough. I don't think they did any actual hitting or football playing, and then they announced captains. So, like, that's my concern. We're not in that locker room. We're not players or coaches. But part of the reason I had such a kind of like huge visceral, like, wow reaction to today's news was this is the first time, like, not everyone is like conspiring to lie to me, you, and everyone else out there. Like, the players see this and know it and understand it far better than we ever could.
Sure.
And if they're seeing and hearing or seeing and playing with one quarterback who's better than the other, and their head coach says it's my decision and I got to, make the best decision for the team, and he picks a guy who's not playing as good, that's where I think you get into potentially murky waters, particularly if week 1 or week 2 does not go according to plan and they lose one of them.
Some truth to that. I also wonder if just how Marcus evaluated the position is, I mean, it sounds strange to say this, but just totally different than, how players or people who watch practices evaluate the position, which is, I think, a reasonable position for Marcus to have, or any coach to have. Like, they know infinitely more about what this team needs and who these quarterbacks are than we ever will. So, one thing that I'd heard very consistently with Carr is that, like, his leadership qualities are phenomenal, like, just phenomenal. And, maybe when you hear the coaches talk about the offense shooting itself in the foot or not, they're not able to get lined up. I heard that they had that issue on Sunday in the practice. They're doing red zone, and, the right tackle false starts twice, out of the gate. And you're just like, okay, you're not functioning that way. So maybe Carr's leadership wins the day. I certainly think I agree with you on the upside point. And I think another thing that you wonder, can you go into Miami, whoever the quarterback is going to be, like, how much are you really going to ask him to throw?
Right.
It's, and I think that, for what we hear about interceptions and turnovers during camp, like, they really pushed the issue, I think, in camp with the passing game because they had to. Also, there was very little point in, like, running Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price into the ground in August. So if you're force feeding a quarterback into an elite secondary, maybe you are just going to have a lot of turnovers. I don't know. I may be grasping at a bit of a straw there, but with Carr, I think the upside is absolutely undeniable. And, maybe those 4 practices we saw were replicated throughout camp in bits and pieces, and they just happened to be the days we weren't there. I don't really know. But I do know for a fact, even after the practice on Sunday, Marcus was privately very high on both guys, felt comfortable in making the decision. But it would be good. And it would be interesting, I should say. We're not owed an accounting of it, but it would be interesting to get an accounting of, like, all right, what tipped the scales for CJ Carr ultimately? I think we both have some ideas, but we have not sort of heard that as we sort of talk to people around Notre Dame.
Yeah, quarterback's different. It's hard to compare it to any other position when it comes to battles, but I do wonder last year, not to this magnitude clearly, but on the offensive line, they chose to start some young guys with no experience over some guys returning with starting experience. And at the time, it felt risky, but it also felt like, Marcus Freeman's going to let the best man win, right? He's going to let things play out in camp, and whoever plays best gets the job. No one's owed anything. And I was thinking, like, that same line of thought if Kenny Minchey were to be named the starter, because we all predetermined, especially after Angeli left, that it was Carr's job to lose. Mm-hmm. And he clearly didn't lose it, despite some of the negative things we heard about from practice. I almost wonder if this, like, and this is coming full circle back to point A, as you said at the top of the show, like, no, maybe this is Freeman choosing the younger guy who's not as polished right now, but has more upside in a year where, yeah, why not? Why shouldn't Notre Dame compete to win a national championship? They competed for one last year. I think this roster is probably more talented and definitely deeper. Why not? I don't want to say Miami and A&M don't matter because that's not true. But shoot, Notre Dame had the most embarrassing loss in college football last year in week 2, and it didn't matter. It didn't stop them from playing for a national championship. And the team that took the field against Ohio State was a far different football team than the one that took the field against Northern Illinois or Texas A&M. So I wonder how much that is playing into it as well. Like it is, if you have the season you want to have as a contender, it is a long ass season, man. And like we're not going to remember all that much about Miami and Texas A&M come January. We're just not. It's going to be different, and I think the feeling is the upside with CJ Carr is so great that we're willing to withstand those inevitable early lumps, even if they come under the bright lights of 2 primetime opponents early on in the season, because we think he'll be better for it later off. Whereas I think logic would dictate, oh, you're preparing for Miami right now. Kenny Minchey, by all accounts, has proven to be the, I don't want to say sharper, but more responsible, less risky pick when it comes to protecting the football. Let's go out there and let our defense do its thing and go on and on.
Yeah, and it's so the challenge to me is like it's less on Carr and more on Mike Denbrock and Gino Guidugli now. Like that's
and Marcus Freeman. I mean,
he's not coming up with a game plan. It's like
but it's his choice.
Yeah, it's his choice, and now Denbrock has to like, all right, what does Carr do well? Where does he struggle? How do I put a game plan together for us to just sort of win at Miami? I don't care if it's 17-10, but like if we have to win it 35-31, what do I do then? So like how you sort of work with Carr to figure out, okay, what's the game plan? How does this work? What are our strengths? That's fascinating to me. I mean, one of the things that I thought was strange coming out of like the no decision on Sunday, which barely lasted 48 hours. It's like every practice that you were going to have moving forward was one more practice that your starter wasn't getting the reps of a starter. Whether that's 60-40 or 70-30 or 80-20 doesn't really matter. It's not 50-50. And so now with this clear, like you can really lean into CJ Carr. Maybe that changes how the offense looks. Certainly he's going to have a chance to stop throwing at Adon Schuler and Leonard Moore and Christian Gray. He's not going to be pressured by Bryce Young and Boubacar Traore in practice. He's going to be working against a scout team where I don't want to say Miami's defense is closer to a scout team, but like Notre Dame's defense is a real problem. And I think that probably made it difficult on Carr and Minchey over the last 2+ weeks because there's somebody in your face pretty regularly. You're not running a true offense in the sense of like you're not giving Jeremiah Love 16, 17 carries and 4 or 5 touches in the pass game. And you're trying to deal with corners who are like future NFL guys and a safety who's probably a future NFL guy. So it's, how they sort of build with Carr moving forward, I think is going to be fascinating. But again, we don't see another practice and we don't have any access to the head coach or the offensive coordinator or any of the players again for another week.
Thank you to all tuning in right now to our live emergency podcast. I want to thank our subscribers near and far. Please continue to subscribe and rate and follow the show on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and right here on YouTube as well. Please leave some nice comments and reviews and ratings if you are so inclined. And thank you to our friends at Obvious Shirts, OBVIOUSSHIRST.com. Great pod merch, t-shirts, quarter zips, hoodies, crew necks, and more. Looking forward to some restocks and to seeing some more of these shirts around campus as the season gets here in a couple of weeks. Thank you to our friends at Obvious Shirts.
And our friends at Roback, RHOBACK, promo code Irish for 20% off your first order. They just dropped a new line of Notre Dame officially licensed apparel. As everything from Roback looks real sharp. So polos, quarter zips. I'm pushing them to get in the vest game because I think like nothing says Notre Dame more like a vest under a collared shirt. So Roback.com, promo code Irish, 20% off your first order.
So you mentioned the throwing part of this. I get that Carr has a better arm by all accounts, but like they didn't throw the ball last year and it turned out pretty good for them. You know what I mean? Like will this line be as good? Will Carr or Minchey be as mobile? All questions to be determined. But when you describe like, oh, they need to find a way to win 17-10, or we win by any means necessary. That was like the game plan for A&M last year, and it worked. I just felt like there'd be more of that for Miami, and by more of that, I felt you'd go with the safer of the two choices. I do think this is a riskier choice, even if on paper it's the guy with the better recruiting pedigree and the golden child, so to speak. He's the highest rated Notre Dame quarterback recruit per the 24/7 Sports Composite since Brandon Wimbush in the 2015 class, I believe. So a lot of upside, obviously, with CJ Carr. I'm very surprised because I think, particularly internally, like the players know more than anything else.
That's true.
And they know what they see. And I just think if this were to blow up, that's where it gets really tricky. Like we all thought back in July before camp, Carr would be the starter. The staff thought Carr would be the starter. I know that for a fact, but they were going to let it play out. If you let it play out and it plays out not to the way that you think it will, doesn't that merit something beyond just, hey, we waited longer than we thought we would to name Carr the starter? Like I don't know. This thing will play itself out in real time. But again, based on everything we'd heard and been told, the last thing I expected today was to hear an announcement from Notre Dame that CJ Carr would be the starting quarterback.
Which is really, it's incredible when you think about it, because I had described Minchey winning the job as like one of the great training camp surprises that I'd ever covered in 25 years. And so we're like, okay, well, that didn't happen. Now the expected guy won the job, and yet we're still sitting here shocked that it happened. And that's why, the point A to point B to point A thing is just the process to get there. I am fascinated by, because you just felt like it was trending so hard in the other direction. I mean, we've both talked to like dozens of people about it, and you're just like, it's surprising. But as we sort of shift into Miami a little bit, like, look, you don't need CJ Carr. Like, I talked to Brady Quinn about his first start. I think he threw 59 times or 51 times in a loss at Purdue. CJ Carr's not throwing 50 times. Probably not throwing 40 times. Probably not throwing 30 times. I think it'd be fine if you threw 22 times. And I'd feel the same way about Kenny Minchey. I mean, another interesting sort of sidebar to all this is like none of whoever they chose at quarterback has zero impact on how I feel like this season's going to go, which is like a weird thing to say, but I don't know if you agree with that. Like, I think they would have been just as good as Minchey as they will with Carr, and now they're going to be just as good with Carr as they would with Minchey. Like, that's the upside of the season at the end. Maybe at the end it'll be different, but I think for the next 12 games, I think that they're a 10-2 team either way.
In principle, I agree with you. I think it could be better than 10-2. I think.
It's like I'm not saying that's the ceiling and the floor, but
I agree with you in principle. But the way they got to this decision makes me a lot less certain. It just does. It just nothing about this felt smooth, which is, I don't know, makes me question things a little bit. If it was Carr from day one, or they named him after a week like they usually do with these competitions, like I'm not Notre Dame, just college football in general, I'd feel better about it, more at ease with it. This feels, I don't know. I mean, I don't think, again, I want to stress this again. Me and you are not at practice every day. We're not witnessing this with our own two eyes. But I also don't want to be dismissive of every single thing we've been told the last 19 days or so. Does that not matter what happened and what everyone saw happen and was telling us? That part of it is interesting to me. Our friend of the show, Ari Wasserman, tweeted after this announcement something to the effect of, someone tweeted out Carr, the expected or the higher ranked recruiter, whatever it was, wins. And Ari said, show me a quarterback competition where the guy expected to win did not win it. There are no upsets in college football with this. And I really can't think of one off the top of my head when he put it that way.
I mean, you can't think of one?
What?
We were talking about one right now.
No, like as far as like the general college football, if you went on DraftKings now, you'd see CJ Carr Heisman odds. You wouldn't see Minchey ones. Like,
yeah, okay, fair point.
No, he meant like the guy with the higher upside, the higher recruit, the guy everyone thought would win at the beginning of camp.
Yeah.
It's always, no matter what, tilts in that guy's favor. And I mean, I'm sure there are examples of it somewhere, but I can't think of like a program naming a preseason starting quarterback where it's like, whoa, he beat out that guy. Like you heard Ohio State had a competition this year and that Keen Hulse pushed Sayin more than anyone thought he would, but it was never like, oh, Keen Hulse is the guy. It was pretty clearly going to be Sayin. It just, I don't know if that means you just get the benefit of the doubt because you're a more talented player and it doesn't matter what you do in practice. But there's definitely an element of this that feels that way just based on everything we've heard.
Yeah, I think the upside clearly is something. The leadership is something. I think, the ability to get the team organized is something which falls into leadership, which is, when Mike Denbrock talks about shooting ourselves in the foot, like that's part of it. That's not just a quarterback comment. That's an offense comment. And I think, one thing that is worth keeping in mind, one, Marcus Freeman has never made a quarterback change by choice. It's only been by injury. Mike Denbrock has. And I think even, Marcus Freeman last year, they rolled the dice on Sam Pendleton, the higher upside player or the more experienced one. I think that lasted 4 games before they were like, no, we're going with the experienced guy because he gives us a better chance to win. So I don't think, as much as quarterback is a one-of-one position, there's nothing like it anywhere in sports. It's not a position you rotate, nor should you ever want to rotate quarterbacks. The track record would suggest that, like, if they need to make a change down the road, that they would. They clearly would prefer that, Carr took this and ran with it. But, if they get to a point where they feel like Minchey gives them a better chance to win, I wouldn't be shocked at that point if they moved in that direction. But I would think that if now that Carr is the starter and getting starting reps and gets that first crack at Miami, you would think that would put him in a position to kind of pull away a little bit because he's getting more work. He's getting, the hours in. He's getting the experience that Minchey doesn't have. So I'll be interested on that front too to see how they sort of keep Kenny Minchey engaged because, I mean, let's be honest. You think Kenny Minchey wasn't aware of things that were tweeted and said and posted on message boards about him over the last 5 to 7 days? Zero chance that's the case. So how you sort of keep him engaged and be ready to go at a moment's notice, that's also a job for Mike Denbrock and Gino Guidugli moving forward.
On the subject of week 1, I've been fascinated by this. Our friend Tim Murray has as well. Less than 2 weeks ago, that over-under was 54.5, and now it's down to 49. Like, that just is a remarkable, and that was before the news today of the quarterback, although I'm sure the uncertainty played some role in that. I expected that to be a really low-scoring game regardless. Seeing Vegas respond the way they have makes me really think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I just think both teams are going to run the ball a lot, plain and simple. But I really do think all possibilities are on the table there. I mean, look, maybe CJ Carr was just pressing in practice because he was so close to having this thing locked up before he actually did. Maybe the freedom, if you will, to not be questioned or to have the job himself allows him to play much better. We'll see. I don't know. It was going to be a lion's den for whoever took that first snap for Notre Dame under center. We just got there in a kind of roundabout way, as you described at the top of the show. They also announced captains. We got to acknowledge that.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the guys we thought would, others not so. Drake Bowen, Will Pauling, Adon Schuler, Billy Shrout, Donovan Heinisch, Emil Wagner. I think Wagner, Schuler, and Shrouth are not terribly surprising. Heinisch isn't
Bowen,
surprising.
I thought was a stone cold.
Bowen's not surprising.
Yeah.
I don't know much about Donovan Heinisch. His brother was always, felt like a leader on the teams he was on.
Yeah.
So it only makes
personality.
sense. Donovan is, and I think Pauling was a captain at Wisconsin.
He was.
A little bit interesting.
And that was one thing that was sort of passed along to me in the last couple of days is like, I knew the staff liked Will Pauling. They freaking love that dude. I mean, they think that he is, not to get all cliche and kid speak here, but like he's got that dog in him. And they think that he is going to be a real impact player, not a role player, an impact player, to the point that, Jaden Greathouse has been sort of told, like, look, Will Pauling is going to play. And, how they make that happen, we'll see. But Will Pauling's been playing the slot. Jaden Greathouse is great in the slot too. But I don't think Will Pauling is not. I don't think he's going to take a back seat in this receiver room. Like, is he one of the top four? For sure. But I doubt that he's fourth. Maybe he's not third. We'll see. I'm really, really interested to sort of see what Will Pauling looks like on Labor Day weekend at Miami.
Jeremiah Love was not a captain. I don't think we were terribly surprised by that.
Nope.
I mean, it's surprising. We've said this before. There are a lot of like frontline players who've been named captains over the years for the simple fact of like, we don't need to talk about why weren't they a captain. But you've got, I think, something in the works on him coming up. You can speak to this a lot better than I can, but
yeah,
it just differently.
I wasn't going to be surprised either way. I do have a very large Jeremiah Love feature that will run the week of the Miami game. A lot of it is going to be about him wrestling whether he wanted to be a captain. He's introverted and very self-aware. And when I got him a little bit one-on-one, and he told me, like, I looked at last year's captains and was like, that's not me. Like, that's how they are as captains. Like, I'm just not that guy. And I think it takes a very high level of self-awareness to say that, because I think we're all sort of trained in sports to be like, if you're a great player, you're supposed to be a captain. You're supposed to be a great outward rah-rah leader. And Love is just like, that's not who I am. He debated whether he was going to do it, and not campaign for it, but put himself up for it. I haven't totally confirmed whether he did or didn't, but like, I think it was something he really wrestled with, whether he wanted to be a captain or not. I think more than guys on the team thinking like, all right, are you captain's material? Because like, they all know who the best players are, and Jeremiah Love is far and away the best player on this team.
Yes, not different breed, the way you just described him, as far as the emotional IQ right there. But I don't read much into it. Not terribly surprised he was a one. Will be interesting though, right? Just one skill player among that group, and it's a guy who just got here. So breaking a new quarterback, it's always something worth keeping an eye on. This was unscheduled, as you can imagine, as much of this training camp storyline was, but we definitely had to address it and digest it. And I'm sure we'll learn more and more in the coming days. And we're 12 days from the start of the season at Miami. We'll both be down there. We'll definitely be potting before then. But want to thank everyone for tuning in. Almost 400 plus of you in there right now on a Tuesday afternoon. We are back in school, at least in Chicago. So Dad needs to run and pick up and not be late on the second day of school. But I'm glad we were able to do this. I have a lot more thoughts. I know you have a lot more thoughts. You're probably going to put yours to paper if you haven't already on The Athletic, as will I, on the Inside Zone. But if you want to add anything on this historic, unhistoric, surprising, unsurprising day, which we learned quarterback.
I think I often describe Notre Dame football as never a dull moment, even when there shouldn't be one. And they sort of had, I think, grown out of that in the last few years. But this feels like kind of one of a never dull moment kind of day. So it makes, even though this is how we thought the season would go all summer, all spring, from the day the Ohio State game ended, it still is more interesting to me today than it was yesterday. So yeah, I cannot wait for the season to start. This is like, I think Notre Dame will be really good, and now they are incredibly interesting on top of that. So yeah, I can't wait to get this thing rolling.
We will have Miami predictions in due time. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I'll say it. I won't be surprised by a single thing that happens, good or bad.
Nope.
Well, that's Pete. I'm Matt. Thanks for everyone tuning in. We see your questions. Wish we had time to get to them, but most of them will be addressed in future content, both online and here on the Independent Pod. Thanks for joining us on the Independent. We will see you guys very soon.